Today, I want to talk about what happened to Ellie Alves and why she didn't return in the final seasons of You. Some fans hoped Ellie might appear in season 5 when Joe returned to the States, but unfortunately, the last we saw of Ellie was Joe sending her away at the end of season 2 with a quick mention of mailing her money in the 3rd season. So what happened to Ellie after she ran away? Was she able to make it on her own? And whose fault was it really that Ellie's life was upended? Let's talk about it. Considered missing since the end of season 2, the Alves sisters are often overlooked as victims of Joe due to Love's direct role in Delilah's demise and her interesting plan to implicate Ellie in a celebrity slaying. But the events of season 2 are entirely the result of Joe weaseling his way into their world to play out his protector fantasy that didn't quite pan out last time. It all starts when Joe shows up in LA to run from his past, personified in Candace, and spots his next target, Love Quinn. He moves into an apartment complex managed by celebrity reporter Delilah Alves to secure a good vantage point to surveil the next victim of his love, lowercase l. While Joe spends the season insisting things will be different with Love, he pivots his protective urges to Delilah and her younger sister Ellie, deciding he needs to look out for her as an excuse to kill Henderson. It's worth noting that Joe hated Henderson from the minute he first showed up in LA, long before he knew Henderson was a sexual predator that victimized Delilah and had his sights set next on Ellie. While Henderson was manipulating Ellie under the guise of mentorship and nearly assaulted her after drugging her as he did to many underage girls before, Joe killing Henderson did not simply save Ellie because it set off the chain of events that led to her sister's death and her life on the run. It kept Ellie safe in the moment, but the secret of Joe killing Henderson was later discovered by Delilah, who Joe started hooking up with right after Love left him. When Delilah finds the cage in Joe's storage unit, he locks her in and later transitions her to timed handcuffs to release her when he is safely out of the country. But as soon as he discovers he has another chance with Love, he rushes back to the storage unit to prevent Delilah from going free. While Delilah is dead when he arrives due to Love killing her the night before, the alternative is not that Joe could just negotiate with her and buy her silence. Once Delilah was trapped in the cage, her fate was sealed. During the night, Love followed Joe to the storage unit and found Delilah, who revealed that Joe had killed Henderson, so a pregnant Love lashed out and slashed her throat to silence her and to protect Joe. After he returns and finds Delilah's dead body, believing he killed her during the night, Joe is once again haunted by his past when Candace shows up and traps him in the cage before calling Love to show her who Joe really is. But Love already knows and proceeds to kill Candace to further protect Joe. When she confesses to Joe her murders and motives, he realizes that she is just like him, except not really. He recognizes her actions and behaviors and understands that it's wrong and bad, but not that it's exactly the same as what he does. So from this point forward, Joe functions like he is good and Love is bad, which means he has to save Ellie from Love when Love has a plan to take care of her. With Delilah missing, Love and Joe watch over Ellie, and Love forms the plan to falsely frame Ellie for Henderson's murder with the intention of arming her with the Quinn family lawyers to get the case laughed out of court and ridiculed in the press, so Ellie could parlay the wrongly accused fame into her budding film career and ultimately taint the case going forward to cover for Joe's involvement. The plan on its own isn't so crazy considering Ellie's a 15-year-old girl who didn't kill Henderson, so it would be hard to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she did. But Joe has decided in his mind that Love is the devil, so he writes off her plan for the emotional turmoil that it would cause to Ellie. Instead, he tells Ellie that her sister is never coming back and shoos her off to live on her own as a 15-year-old runaway. Ellie blames Joe before she leaves, rightly remarking that he was the one who brought the Quinns into their lives. Joe carries on with his own life, faking it with Love, and they move to Madre Linda, where he periodically sends money to Ellie to uphold his perception of himself, keeping her safe from Love. But with Love out of the picture by the start of season 4, Joe moves on again to London, remembering Ellie as a lesson in dealing with teens, but carrying no responsibility for her anymore. The real reason Ellie didn't return in New season 4 was due to Jenna Ortega's acting success filling up her schedule, so there could be traces of Ellie's potential storyline in the final result of Nadia's character. Imagining Ellie in Nadia's place being framed by Joe would have driven the point home even more, especially considering Joe is plagiarizing Love by framing this teenage girl for the murder that he did, the very plan he rejected in season 2, being repurposed in season 4 against the character that he previously protected. That would have been even more brutal, but unfortunately, Ellie didn't appear in season 4. And once she didn't return in season 4, I didn't expect her in season 5 because she's literally only gotten more famous, so of course she wasn't going to be in season 5. And honestly, I didn't want her to show up because I don't think Ellie has a place in season 5 once we've met Nadia in season 4. While there was potential for Ellie to return with the internet sleuths, investigating Joe through the Dr. Nikki subreddit and having first-hand experience experience with him, it would have been too TV for me if she was the one to take him down. With her last appearance being the end of season 2, it's more fitting for Ellie's fate to be left unknown. Once Joe has moved on, she was on her own. He only protected her so far as it served his narrative about himself at the time. Once he closes the book on love, Ellie's just a reference, a character in his past. As independent as she was, I think Ellie probably managed to start over in a new city like Delilah did when she left home at 18. I would hope she was smart enough to get a job and secure an income knowing that she couldn't rely on Joe forever. If she managed to make it on her own after Joe supposedly died in Madre Linda, I expect that Ellie might have pieced together the truth when he was resurrected publicly in his return to New York. She might have started living on the down low after realizing what happened in LA but not being able to prove it. Ellie's fate being unknown by the end of the show might not be intentional, but it makes sense to not get closure because Joe himself is unconcerned with it. He showed up in LA and preyed on Ellie, invading her life through stalking and surveilling under the guise of protecting her, just as he did to Beck. Through Joe's narrative, his relationship with Ellie is protective in nature, with him taking it upon himself to save a young and vulnerable Ellie from a predator that she's been hanging out with, while really just using it as an excuse to hurt somebody that he already hates. Yet somehow, inexplicably, the end result of Joe protecting Ellie is the death of her sister and the upheaval of her entire life as she's forced to run away at Joe's insistence, leaving the young and vulnerable Ellie to start over alone in some city, hiding from the Quinns. Ellie is in no way better off thanks to Joe inserting himself into her life and ruining everything just because he couldn't find an excuse to kill for love. Not knowing whether she lived or died is a fitting loose end for her storyline as it reflects Joe's own indifference towards anyone that doesn't serve to further his narrative anymore. Personally, I'm fine to assume that Ellie was resourceful enough to start over and find a job before Joe went AWOL, and smart enough to stay hidden once he returned to New York. And optimistically, I would like to believe that she was able to sell her story once Joe was behind bars, ironically landing on Love's original plan. Yeah, you know what? I believe that. With Joe in jail, Ellie is free to tell her truth and sell her story and launch her film career despite her life being disrupted by Joe. How about that? Woke feminist-ass endings for everyone, even characters that weren't in the season.